I wanted to transition over to Frank, because Frank, your career includes like some of the biggest of the big pharma type companies. And it always makes me curious as to why someone would go from kind of that to something so much smaller. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how your path to the CEO suite.
Sure. By background, I'm an engineer by training. So in the early days, I would design, start up manufacturing facilities to produce any variety of drug product. And so that's my early years. And we wound up in New Jersey at a couple of different pharmaceutical companies. And I remember at the time that my mentor went over to a company called Genentech. And he calls me and says, "Hey, Frank, you should come here and visit." This is in the early days. And I said, "No, I'm pretty comfortable doing what I'm doing here." But I made the trip anyway. And what I saw there was I really felt and saw that there was a real focus on patients. It wasn't just a sign on the wall. It was, I felt it in the people that I saw and met with. Real focus on the science, and they treated people well there. And so I thought, on the plane flight back, I was trying to figure out, how am I going to convince my wife that we're going to need to move out to the West Coast? And we did. And so I was fortunate enough to grow with Genentech and eventually Genentech Roche for, I guess it was about 13 years. And so I always thought that if there ever came a time that I could start a company or be a part of a small company, I'd want to take what I learned at Genentech Roche, which was really the focus on patients, treating people well, following the science, and apply that in the new company. And as it turns out, a longtime recruiter that I had sort of kept in touch with over time reached out to me and introduced me to Forma, and the rest is history.
So, Roger, or Frank, I asked Roger a question about the ugly, as far as a first-time CEO, and I think it was kind of like the handling all those balls up in the air when you're kind of doing it part-time. For you, I wanted to ask about the bad, because when you made this decision to join this small company, you came in during a very trying time. Maybe you could update us a little bit about what that was like.
Sure. Yeah. By way of background, Forma had been in existence at that point in time for 12 years, doing great research, and had raised over $1 billion in non-dilutive capital. So tremendous research there. So what I found in the company was something that, there were so many molecules, so much science there, it just needed focus. And so when I came in with the new leadership team, we said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to focus on rare hematologic disorders and cancers. And we're not just going to do research. We're going to do research, development, and ultimately commercialize a drug." So a very different vision than what was in place over the past 12 years at that point in time. And so, that resulted in a pretty dramatic reduction in force. It's tough to live through that kind of thing. But we did. And I have to tell you that as we were living through that, there were some pivotal moments. I recall maybe a couple months into it, we said, "Look, let's all take a week and go visit a couple of centers. Go visit patients, healthcare professionals, caregivers, nurses, social workers in the areas of interest to us at that time, which was sickle cell and AML and a few other areas." As you might imagine, at that point in time, we had a lot going on, and the leadership team said, some were excited about it, some were dragging their feet, but we went anyway. So we took a week to do that. And to a person, when we came back, they said, "Frank, we got to do this for the entire organization." And so we did. We brought most of the folks that we saw on the visit that particular week to the Boston Hyatt Airport. And we did that for the entire company at the time. And that was about 3 months into the tenure. And I have to say, we were going through a lot of change at the time, but that, 3 days that we spent at the Boston Hyatt Airport was really the inflection point that brought all of us together around this purpose of really helping patients and why we're there. And so during that time, we lost colleagues that, we had known for a long time to other positions and to a downsizing, but we also brought on new folks. And I really think that was really the moment that helped us to start inflecting upward in our journey to be what we are today.
Before I transition to Ivana, I wanted to give a couple numbers just to paint the picture for people, Frank, a little bit. So, because when you came in, you're in the middle of a downsizing from like 300 to 180 and ended up going down all the way down to 70 at one point. And then you're asking people, look, we're going to take a week and go to these medical centers. And meanwhile, they're doing like 3 people's jobs. So it probably was a bit of a tough sell, but in the end, paid off culture-wise.
Yeah, I think this is the old adage of sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. And so as you might imagine, the people who we really wanted to stay, we had to really paint a picture of not only what they were losing, of course you could see that around us, but also the kind of company we're going to build going forward. And so that was super, super important to do that. So I think that despite all the demands, and there's so many demands, whether it's a reduction in force, change in strategy, raising capital, whatever it is, that time spent on nurturing the culture is super important. And I can tell you over the past couple of years, as we've grown quite rapidly since then, it's really the culture and the values of the company that have attracted people to our company and the right kind of people.